Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here is what we have coming up in the bulletin. Deadly gun attack in Hanover kills 3 and left 4 hospitalized, injuring worker at Kingston Freeport Terminal. Sports, West Indies to face Bangladesh in the Women's Cricket World Cup later this evening. Good afternoon, I'm Simon Preston and here are the details. The Police High Command has ordered a top-level investigation into last evening's deadly attack at a mini-mart in Hanover in which 7 persons were shot, 3 fatally by gunmen. As you'll hear in this report from Shane Masters, the police are also keeping a close watch on the community.
Fear and terror gripped the community of Santoy, Green Island in Hanover following a gruesome attack Wednesday evening. 7 persons were shot, 3 fatally.
Devastated. Really devastated. I mean, didn't expect something like this to happen.
Police reports indicate that sometime before 8 p.m., 2 of the deceased were installing cameras at this minimart when 3 men entered posing as customers. After being served, the men brandished firearms and opened fire inside the store, hitting 3 people. As they made their escape, the gunmen continued spraying bullets. When the shooting ended, 4 more persons were found suffering from gunshot wounds. The deceased men have been identified as 55-year-old Michael Smith, 37-year-old Mark Austin, and 44-year-old Omar Mahabi. Omar Mahabi's relative spoke with our news team.
My mother called me from overseas and said, "You know hear what happened?" I said, "No, I'm not here." You see your cousin get shot. I said, "What you telling me?" You know? Yeah. And on my way rushing down, I come see the crime scene right there, so. Me had to approach the crime scene and then they tell me to turn back and I want exactly find out what they go on. Then me say some people here so tell me say Omar get shot and he wait to hospital, he dead.
Meanwhile, the police have since increased their presence in the area. But the residents say more needs to be done. Our news center was informed that the High Command has ordered a high-level probe following intelligence that members of a criminal network ordered the attack as part of an extortion racket operating in the area. Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Stakeholders in southern Clarendon recently started a program aimed at reducing domestic abuse cases. This initiative is also intended to increase reporting among men. Jamaica Maitland reports.
We say God individually cover us and protect us.
After a quick prayer, the group got to work. They walked from yard to yard in the Lioneltown community in Clarendon to speak with residents about the incidents of domestic abuse. Residents were also given leaflets with information on how to defuse situations that could lead to violence in the homes.
The woman them will beat the man, and the man them will beat the woman. It will stop. We don't support it, man.
But if one resident's views are to go by, a lot of work is needed to change the views of some men.
Enough time man I get beat, that man now want to talk still enough.
No man, if you want to beat you, man, as long as in your house, you take a beat.
You take a beat.
The representatives of the Gender Ministry explained why men should not be afraid to report abuse at the hands of their wives or girlfriends.
If you look on the bigger picture, what about the children them in the home?
Yes.
Them seeing that and them believe that this is love. So when they see these situations, we have to stop it. And even the verbal abuse, not take it lightly, That's why some of our kids them have low self-esteem. We need to curb these things.
The police also used the occasion to do a walkthrough of the King Street community of Lioneltown. They explained that the area is under security surveillance due to an increase in criminal activities.
What we are doing today is basically walking the space, meeting and greeting, find out some of the concerns, see how we can make the things better, see how we can make peace reign some more, understand the space some more, because it's a partnership we are looking at, and we all have to work together. If we don't work together, it can't work, You understand? And whenever there's no peace, remember, so once there's no peace, whatever activity in our community, all that's happening. Yes. Because we have to come in now and impose some things to ensure that the calm is maintained. Yes. So we expect someone to work with them.
Jamaica Maitland, TVJ News.
Now, operations at the Kingston Freeport Terminal were halted this morning after a straddle carrier crane overturned, injuring a worker. The extent of the worker's injury is unknown. It's not clear what caused the equipment to overturn. Efforts by our news team to get a comment from the management and a union representative proved futile. We were told that the individuals are locked in a meeting. Now, we'll have more in this story in subsequent newscasts. A Clarendon family is desperately seeking help in locating their elderly relative, Carbin Thompson. The senior was last seen more than 2 weeks ago, and despite their search and reports to the police, they are still no closer to finding him.
Missing without a trace. Carbin Thompson, a 75-year-old from Lionel Town in Clarendon, was last seen on March 1. According to his relatives and neighbors, Thompson, whose mental capacity is fading, was last seen straying along the main road.
And somebody come and say, Mr. D, Carbin going up on the road. I get a ride, go for him, get him to turn back, but he never come exactly back home. So he make a U-turn to a place named Moneymouse Prep School. Then from there is the last time seen.
The family says when he did not return home, a search was launched. As it dragged into hours, they realized the situation was serious.
I went to the police station Wednesday when I come down here, and I tell the police, and the police say, all right, we must come back if we hear anything. Thursday evening now, me go make a report. And then put in my book and what have you, stuff, and then they say we go and search.
They have been searching for 2 weeks now with no success. They are now desperately seeking the public's assistance in finding him. But they are also upset with the Lionel Town police, as they believe enough isn't being done to find the missing man.
Because he's missing for so long and reports have been made. And we in the community have to be the one that been pushing out all efforts to find him. You understand? We all know how it goes when one gets old and the world is senile. That is not our concern right now. Our concern is to find him.
The community people and friends and family, they really turn out. When I see the condition, I have to come here Wednesday to talk to the police out of station. So they need to speed up the process because they're not doing nothing.
When our news correspondent visited the Lionel Town police station, the officers declined our request for a comment on the case. The family, however, is asking anyone who sees Carbin Thompson or may have information on his whereabouts to contact them at 876-826-7007, 876-344-4436, or the nearest police station. Herman Green, TVJ News.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to Midday News. Employees at the Vocational Training Development Institute, VTDI, and National Council on Technical and Vocational Education and Training, NCT-VET, are striking again. This morning, the disgruntled workers stood at the gates of the compound, insisting that they will not return to work until the Education Minister signs an MOU with the entities. On February 28, the Minister met with the NCT-VET and VTDI to discuss salary and other contract issues. In a release, the entities said an agreement was made following the meeting for an MOU to be drafted and signed. However, the workers say the Ministry is yet to respond.
This will impact the system, so we are asking that good sense will prevail from the Minister of Education and the Higher Trust and the Office of the Prime Minister, and they will resolve our issues expeditiously. We have been here before, and each time they call for a meeting, we are out of meetings now. We want to see a document, black and white on paper, telling us how they are solving our issues. What are the plans?
The Transport Authority is clamping down on unruly taxi operations in the corporate area. An undercover raid was conducted and several operators will now be prosecuted. Cody and Barrett has more in this report.
Commuters have been complaining that some taxi operators have been overcharging them. It's also been reported that some Hackney carriages have been operating as route taxis in the corporate area. The Transport Authority went searching for rogue operators. On Tuesday, they launched an undercover sting operation in affected areas where Transport Authority agents boarded taxis to seek out illegal activity.
This operation basically was to take prosecution against those persons, and in the same time we use the opportunity to sensitize the commuting public that this is not how they are to utilize the service of these taxis.
Over the past 2 days, 14 persons operating along the Papine to New Kingston route and the Red Hills Road to Halfway Tree route were found in breach of their road licenses and subsequently charged. Monitoring and regulating exercises are continuing in these areas. As for overcharging allegations,
we have conducted several operations in those areas, and in fact, so far we have had 7 prosecutions to date. The prescribed fare there is $120, and based on the allegation we have, they were charging passenger $150.
Despite several reports of overcharging, no statements were given to initiate investigations. However, Mr. Anderson is urging everyone to do their part to help with successful prosecution.
We need your support because on some of these operations, during the interviewing stage, we are required to take witness statements. So we are just making a special appeal. During those operations, if you are called upon to give a statement, we ask that you exercise your civic responsibility.
Between January 11 and the 31 this year, overcharging operations were conducted in the areas of Papine, New Kingston, and Halfway Tree. 7 operators were prosecuted. Since August 17, 2021, island-wide operations against overcharging of fares in light of the fare increase by the government was launched. 331 persons in the Kingston metropolitan region alone were found to be in violation. Cody and Barrett, TVJ News.
Mayor of St. Anne's Bay, Sidney Stewart, says he will not tolerate illegal parking in major towns in the parish. It's why the municipal corporation has heightened its clampdown activities on motor vehicles parked illegally. Shamela Pullen reports.
For years, the St. Anne Municipal Corporation has been trying to address the issue of illegal parking in the parish. It's believed that the Brownstone Courthouse could have been saved if a car was not parked illegally in the driveway where firefighters could have been easily accessed the facility. It's part of the reason Mayor of St. Anne's Bay, Sidney Stewart, says he will not let up on illegal parking.
St. Anne's Bay, the enforcement officers went out in full force yesterday. And of course, everything that were parked in areas that they were not authorized to park were clamped. We saw the people that were in office, and I saw the people coming in and out to pay the fee. One of the good things that I recognize that the people whose vehicles were clamped are complying. They came in and pay so that the vehicle can be released for them to go about their business.
Mr. Stewart says this will be extended to other major towns. He says the corporation is also looking to acquire more clamps. Already he notes that the municipal corporation has been generating a lot of revenue from this process based on the magnitude of the problem.
From where I sit, I know that I've seen approximately 20 persons coming in and out to say that they were clamped and paying. So if I use that figure, it's 20 times 2,500. But I know that the department with the Budget and Revenue Officer, Director of Finance, has given the instructions. And I also know that the municipal wardens are very serious about their work because the indiscipline on the roadway is something that we are going to try and get rid of completely in terms of how you park.
He also says the municipal corporation is starting to look at paid parking locations.
We have no paid parking locations in the town at the moment. Of course, we have the transportation center. Many years ago, we had established another location, which is much smaller, for paid parking. It really wasn't being used, and we decided to transform it into a second transportation center for the vehicles that going up into the rural areas because of the congestion. And that is where we are now. We're putting in all the infrastructure required.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
It's now time for the Business Minute. Here's Cody and Barrett.
In the world of business, the deadline for filing income tax returns has been extended to March 22. Tax Administration Jamaica, TAJ, says it took the decision after careful consideration of several factors impacting the business community. Income tax filers are being encouraged to meet the deadline to avoid penalties. TAJ says it will continue to provide free tax season support for income tax filers who earn $10 million or less while observing COVID-19 public health and safety protocols. The U.S. Central Bank said it was lifting its benchmark rate by 0.25%. It signaled plans for further rate increases in the coming months. The move comes as the U.S. economy faces new uncertainty caused by the Ukraine-Russia war and COVID-19 outbreaks in China. It is hoping the decision will reduce demand for goods and services, helping to ease inflation in the U.S., which hit a new 40-year high of 7.9% last month. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
Time now for the top regional and international stories with Sandy Williams.
In regional news, the Pan American Health Organization PAHO is urging countries in the Americas, including the Caribbean, to continue focusing on the protection of the most vulnerable, such as the elderly, the immunocompromised, healthcare workers, and other high-risk groups, even as COVID-19 vaccination continues to expand in the region. Assistant Director at PAHO, Dr. Jarbas Barbosa, said COVID-19 infections and deaths are declining in most of the region, but there are still too many cases and deaths being reported every day. He added that this is a clear indication that transmission is not yet under control. Since the first case of the virus was reported in the Americas 2 years ago, 149 million cases of COVID-19 have been reported and 2.6 million people have died. On the international scene, the Kremlin says U.S. President Joe Biden calling Russian President Vladimir Putin a war criminal over his invasion of Ukraine is, quote, absolutely unacceptable and inexcusable. A Kremlin spokesman also said Biden doesn't have the right to say that based on past U.S. military actions. He said the U.S. has bombed people all over the world for many years and used 2 atomic bombs on Japan during World War II after it had already been defeated. Biden's war criminal comment on Wednesday is the harshest condemnation of Putin's action from any U.S. official since the war in Ukraine began 3 weeks ago. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
We head to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have your midday sports report. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. Let's bowl off with some cricket, as the West Indies will be looking to bounce back to winning ways as they face Bangladesh in the Women's Cricket World Cup at the Bay Oval in New Zealand this evening. The Caribbean side are 5th in the table on 4 points, while Bangladesh are 7th on 2 points. Despite not being in the top 4, West Indian pacer Shamila Connell feels the team is in a good place heading into the last 3 games of the group stages.
Yeah, before we played our first couple of games, we know our 4 games up front was going to be very difficult. And we see if we could at least snatch up 2 wins, that would put us in a good position going into the last 3. And so far we have done that, so we just have to, continue to just play the good cricket that we played in the first half of the tournament. And hopefully we see ourselves in the semi-finals.
The match bowls off at 5 o'clock Jamaica time. The top 4 teams will book their spot into the semi-finals of the competition. To track and field we go now, as 6 Jamaicans are slated to be in action on the opening day of the 2022 World Indoor Championships in Belgrade, Serbia on Friday. At 4:15 a.m. Jamaica time, Brianna Williams and Sharika Jackson will be the first Jamaicans on the track in the heats of the women's 60 metres. At 5 o'clock, Christopher Taylor will line up in the men's 400 metres, while at 5:41, Stephanie Ann McPherson and Renisha McGregor will compete in the women's equivalent. At 12:50, Danielle Thomas-Dodd will be looking to improve on her silver medal that she picked up at the indoors in 2018 as she competes in the final of the women's shot put. Live coverage of the World Indoor Championships can be seen on TVJ and the TVJ Sports Network starting at 3:35 a.m. with the women's pentathlon. To football now, as Reggae Girls defender Sashana Campbell has signed for Polish top flight club KKPK Kronin until the summer of 2023. The 31-year-old signed this deal after impressing for the Reggae Girls last month in the World Cup qualifiers. This is the first time Campbell is at a club since 2020, where she played with Maccabi in the Israeli League. Campbell, who was a member of Jamaica's squad at the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup in France, has 36 caps for the Reggae Girls. And just before we go, an update over in the cricket at the Kensington Oval in Barbados, England. They have reached 369 for 3 at sports time against the West Indies. Of course, the first test ended in a draw. And that is it for your Midday Sports Report, and that is it for the entire Midday News package. I'm Simon Preston. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a pleasant good afternoon.